It's impossible that Michelangelo painted the Sistine alone. Fresco is an enormously complicated endeavor. It requires sort of entrepreneurial skills of organization. One needs to mix plaster, one needs to construct scaffolding, mix paints. So Michelangelo probably had as many as 13 assistants over the course of 4 years.
Michelangelo painted the ceiling with a technique known as buon fresco. This means applying the color or pigment to a fine layer of damp plaster. Before he could do this, the ceiling had to be prepared with several base coats of coarse plaster. This is the first job at St. Joseph's.
This is the basis of all fresco painting. This stuff is quicklime, or calcium oxide, and it's from this that we make most of the materials we need for the painting. If I add water to it, there's a very hungry reaction. This chemical wants the water inside it. And when it gets the water, what happens is it hydrates, and that gives you the basic lime putty. Of course, this would have been done on a really industrial scale in Michelangelo's day. What would have happened now is that stuff would have been left for perhaps 5 years, maybe even 10 years for really good stuff. The longer it's left, the better, because it really turns into a lovely, creamy, rich consistency. You can't use it fresh. So what we have here is stuff that's already aged, and this is gorgeous.
Michelangelo's mission was to come up with a design big enough and bold enough to bring to life this huge expanse of plaster. The Pope had set his heart on something from the New Testament.
The Pope's design for the ceiling was poor. There were swirls and swirls of geometric squares and circles, and 12 separate panels of the 12 apostles. There was no drama, no scope to study the human form. I've kept the Pope's drawings. They're in here somewhere. Can't find anything. My eyes, you see. I paid for the Sistine ceiling with my eyes.
Michelangelo defied the Pope. Instead of the New Testament, he turned to the Old Testament for inspiration. He began by making sketches. Leo is drawing Michelangelo's Adam to prepare for painting the fresco at St. Joseph's.
Michelangelo wants to create somebody like the first human being, the first one ever. And so it's an ideal perfection, to sort of a extreme masculinity is basically what's on his mind. And the interesting thing about Michelangelo with his models and stuff like that, I mean, they were all men for a start. And in fact, actually, that shows up in Michelangelo's work, because most of the women just look like men with breasts, because he may not have seen a naked female form at all.
Michelangelo's really mixed up, isn't he, sexually? I mean, I would love to know what a psychiatrist would say about him now. He's very, very interested in carnal things. There's no doubt about it. He gets tremendous excitement out of flesh.
The male body is a paragon of beauty, a marvel of symmetry, strength, grace. There is nothing so expressive of idea, expression, thought, emotion. In the small mind, it might inspire carnal thoughts. To me, it is God's clay, in which he molds his own image.
What Michelangelo would have done is do a drawing on this scale, grid it all up, and then proportionately make a large grid of squares on a bigger sheet of paper. So having done the master drawing, the next step is to get a gigantic piece of paper and to draw Adam the size he will be on the ceiling. Now, the next stage after that is to prick and pounce. This is a little bodkin, a little sharp point. And what I'm doing here is I'm just pricking through lots of little holes in the outline of Adam. I have a feeling that Michelangelo would have actually had an assistant do this, because it's very laborious.
A fine top coat of plaster is applied to the ceiling, just enough for one day's painting. It's known as a giornata.
So this is the basic plan. These show the giornate, which is the day work that I'm going to complete.
Michelangelo split the scene up into 14 of these giornate. With Leo painting Adam and Fleur painting God, they will each have 7 working days. While it is still damp, the artists can transfer their drawings onto the plaster.
And we'll put this on the ceiling and then pounce through a little bag of charcoal and make little marks all the way along, leaving the outline, take the paper away, and then join up the dots. Just a tiny bit more there. Taste it, can you?
Like Michelangelo, Leo and Fleur must choose their pigments carefully. If they get it wrong, it could spell disaster.
I've sent some money to my father to buy an ounce of azurite. I told him to buy the best there is. If you can't get the best, don't bother.
Michelangelo demanded the finest quality and value for money. Some earth pigments, like terra verde and raw umber, were very cheap because they were dug up in Italy. But others, like ultramarine blue, were as expensive as gold. It was imported from faraway Afghanistan.
The essence of fresco painting is very, very simple. Just the raw powdered pigment, a bit of water. And unlike oil painting, where the oil holds the pigment together, and this, it's a surface you paint on, the plant.